Hello guys, welcome back. Bhavna Gunwani this side. Today we'll discuss about JavaScript functions. Basically, the moment we talk about JavaScript functions, they helps to perform the action which is in repeated iteration. Rather than writing the same piece of code again and again, we write it in a block. We named it as a function and we call it whenever we need this. It helps in modular programming. A function can accept 0 or more parameters to perform the task. It totally depends upon your requirement. A function optionally returns a value, but when you do not return a specific value, it actually returns undefined. So make sure if you are not returning anything from your function, do not call that function from console statement. Just normally call, it will execute and print its output and will go back. The functions in JavaScript is a function object itself. Each function itself is known as an iterative object in JavaScript. I'll prove it to you. A JavaScript function can be assigned to a variable or passed as an argument to another function. And sometimes almost we call these functions as anonymous functions or callback functions that we pass as an argument. We'll discuss about it in very detail. JavaScript has many built-in functions such as alert, prompt, and conform. As I discussed, each function treated like an object in JavaScript. These are also treats like an object. Let's try to understand how to create the JavaScript function practically. I just switched to Visual Studio Code to understand the function creation. Function itself is a keyword. We actually just name the function. If we do have any arguments, we write it inside this argument list. Otherwise, we simply write its body. As of now, I will be using Node as a runtime environment to test my JavaScript. So here I'm gonna tell you just by printing a simple hello world message. So this is the definition or a declaration of a function. It's a very simple function. If you would like to call this function, simply say the function say hello and just call this. The major aspect of doing this is if you have this block of body required again and again in your application, you don't really need to repeat it. Its rule is do not repeat itself. BRY, don't repeat yourself. So, and you can call it multiple times like this. Let's see how it works. Just simply would like to run this app.js to test whether this function gets called up successfully. And here you can see that the function gets called up 2 times. I hope it's clear the function declaration or a definition and then how to call that function. We'll talk about what are the different types of functions we do have in JavaScript. JavaScript basically has 3 types of functions. The one it has is named function, the another is anonymous function, and then we have arrow function. Named function has further categories. Let's talk about named function in detail. The moment we say that it's a named function, the function keyword followed by the function name, as I discussed here, function, and this is the name of this function followed by the function keyword. The function parameters are listed inside the parameters list or argument list. I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes. Function parameters behave like the local variable. They exist within the function body. By default, they declared with let keyword, do not implement it by the var keyword, so they get called and used within the function body itself. Named functions are always hoisted and have on this value. I'm going to talk about it. Hoisting is already being discussed. Please go and check the recordings. Let's talk about them practically. As of now, you can see that this is a very simple function where we have just defined the function and then we are calling it as per our requirement. But in real time, we do not have say hello method, right? So now I'm going to tell you, you can also define the parameterized function where you can pass the required argument into your function. For example, I just wanted to declare a function get full name, and here you can pass your first name and last name as 2 arguments. As I discussed earlier, JavaScript is loosely typed. You really don't need to declare by writing let first name or something, because they are auto declared with the block scope. The moment I would try to use these values console.log, simply I just wanted to print first name and last name in the concatenation, first name and then last name. You can also append some more values if you would like to. So this is an expression binding also, you can just understand that way. If I wanted to call this function, calling the parameterized function. So here if I will call my get full name, you can see that I'm going to pass 2 parameters, king and coacher. The moment I'm going to pass the required arguments, as it is waiting for 2 arguments and I'm passing 2 arguments only, it will as it is printed welcome king coacher as expected. For your better convenience, what I think I can do is I can just comment out this piece of code so that we can just check any particular category at a given time. So you can see that it's been printing welcome king coacher. Now, if you have any idea about the data types, we do have an undefined data type that works here. For example, if you do not assign the required argument as expected, your get full name is expecting 2 parameters or arguments, so you are just passing 1. In that case, what will happen? The second parameter would be passed as an undefined, which is having lack of value. So I can just prove it to you. Just get it up. Yes, I would like to tell you one thing. Tomorrow, if you pass 100 and 200, they will also concatenate it. As I told you, JavaScript has a rule. It's a loosely typed scripting language. So this drawback falls in here. That gets implemented and introduced in the type support languages or scripting languages. That is a TypeScript. So these are the ways how do we actually create the named parameters. One thing more I want to tell you, sometimes we have a question that Bhavna, why if I pass more than one value, more than expected values, for example, king, coacher, and then I would like to pass Shreya, what will happen if I would like to do this? So only 2 parameters would be, arguments would be expected and the rest will be ignored. If you pass less, it will be undefined. If you pass more, it would be ignored. I hope things are pretty clear to everyone. How does a JavaScript named function gets called up? I also would like to introduce one more thing with you guys. The moment we talk about JavaScript functions and we talk about the parameters specifically, sometimes we're really not sure what are the number of parameters we would like to expect. So you do have an argument array. Let me show it to you. For example, I have this function, and if I would like to access the first name and the last name, there is an argument array gets created and assigned by default to it. You can access your argument array like this: argument at index 0 and argument at index 1. So the number of argument you are expecting, you need to be pretty sure that the number of argument that you are passing. Let's see if it works. You can see that it's perfectly works. Question comes in, Bhavna, can I just ignore writing these arguments? Let's have a look. So here you can see that once you are passing the argument, we are not using the argument name here. So it will be taken up from the argument array that you can easily ignore it. So this is a parameterized function with argument object. Now the question is, tomorrow if I have more than one argument like this, then how it will help us. So argument object can be iterated like this as well. Rather than printing this way, I can just simply say that we'll iterate a for loop. We'll execute the index where index is less than arguments array dot length. Every time I just wanted to console.log the argument at index I or index. So you can see that it should solve your problem. But the question is console.log prints in each statement, so that's a benefit. That's a drawback. But yes, you can access more than one argument as a given point of time. Here Shreya is not ignored. That was the unexpected parameter, but it also got iterated with the help of the argument. I hope things are pretty clear to everyone. How does named function with parameters works? One more category we do have, that is function with return type. Let's try to understand that. For example, I just have this first name and last name. I just wanted to print first name and last name concatenated here. The moment I'm going to pass king and coacher, it will be printing it, right? But if I don't want it to print it here, my requirement is to return the calculated value. We will be using this in my calling execution. So this get full name gets called up with king and coacher. The value gets assigned to a variable, let's say full name. And then I would like to print it. Console.log. It's a very common requirement in real time. We call it and it will produce the result and will give it to the end user. And here you can see that it works well. So here the full name is saying that's perfectly fine. Okay, it's a full name. So you can do a shortcut of this in case you want to implement this way. Whatever output comes in the full name variable, you can directly call this get full name from the console. You can pass the expected names John Smith. It will call the function, will return the output, and as it is, it will print it in the one single statement. I hope things go well with you as well. So this is parameters functions with return type or a return statement. So this is all about the category of named functions. The another category that we have is anonymous function or function expression. Anonymous function is very similar to the named function, but except it may be defined as a named or anonymous function and assigned to a particular variable. Because function expression consists the name, but anonymous function does not contain even the name of the function. As I discussed, we use it generally in callback, where passing the function as an argument or assigning it to a particular function name variable. Let's try to access this by a pretty example. Function expressions and anonymous functions are never hosted. Guys, I would humbly suggest you that go and watch the JavaScript hosting implementation to understand how the declaration sequence works. So let's try implementing the function expression and then we will be talking about the anonymous function. I'm going to move on to the another file and saying it as anonymous function demo. For example, earlier I said that I have this function, very simple function, and this is my parameterized function. I don't want it to use a return statement, so I'll just keep it safe by writing a console.log, keeping it very simple. After that, the moment I'll call this get full name, I can easily call this. But my purpose here is to assign this variable into username or something. Now you can see that once the variable is having a reference of the function body, the moment you try to call your get full name now and passing first name and last name, let's say Bhavna and Gunvani, you can see that it is saying that get full name is not defined. This is actually known as a function expression. What do you mean by this? It means that it's a very real time. Just stay with us or go and watch the object-oriented implementation. The moment you will be creating these functions into the object, into the class, then you will not be creating it like this. You have to assign it to a property. So, and at that point of time, the function needs to assign to the property or a variable. At that point of time, this name does not exist more. How can you call this function? The variable that you have, in which you have assigned your function body, that will become your function name. Have a look. You can see that. Welcome, Bhavna Gunvani. It prints well. It was a very earlier implementation that how a function can be assigned to a variable. But now this is having a more better approach. That approach says that, tell me one thing, if you create a function and you cannot access that name, then why do you give the name of the function? Well, very pretty question here. Obviously, if we cannot access this name, we assign it to the username, and we can only call it by the username, then why do we name this function? Why can't we call this as unnamed function, or in easier words, you can call it as an anonymous function. And this is known as the another category called anonymous function. It is a very useful function category, guys, trust me, because we're gonna use it in our higher level of implementations. So just here you are requiring to understand the concepts. Later you will be using it as per your requirement. Have a look. We can easily call that up. Without name, the function is getting called because function gets assigned to the variable and the variable can only call the function this way. And this is known as function, anonymous function itself. The next category, which is very important, is the arrow function. Arrow function is the another type of the function. The purpose of creating the arrow function is same, but it gives a more better modern approach of writing the function as a fat and concise syntax. Let's talk about it in detail. Similar to function expression, but it has a shorter syntax than the function expression or anonymous function, I would like to easily call this. Defined by using the parenthesis that contains the parameters followed by the arrow, and then definition of the function within the curly braces if required and if more than statements are there. The new operator can't be used with arrow function. It's just a normal function type as we have ever used. Doesn't have prototype property. It's a normal category of the function. Does not have its own this because it do not have its own reference of the object as the normal function. Let's talk about it in detail. Let's say if I would like to call a say hello function you created like this. If you would like to call it using the it will print console.log hi. And if you would like to create it like anonymous function, you will try to create it like this. Say hello function and it will print a console.log hi. But if I will be writing it using the arrow function expression, it's pretty simple. Say hello. If you have any parenthesis, do not write a function keyword. Then write the parenthesis, otherwise write an empty list. Arrow, if you have multiple statements, use curly braces. Otherwise, simply write console.log hi. It's a very simple implementation of writing this function. Let's try to comment them up and try to write only the one that I have tried using the arrow. You wanted to call this function, simply call this function one time, two times, or multiple times. And just call that up. Note, arrow functions demo, hi and hi 2 times. Just one line of code, no function keyword, no return statement, no curly braces. Isn't it a simple iteration, guys? If you have more than one statement, you can simply write like this. Console.log. Let's learn JavaScript. Then you have to create curly braces, otherwise no need of it. Print message and try to call this up. Okay, why is it printing it? Okay, I'm writing hi also every time. If you have any parameters required, you can write like this, var addition. Let's say we need 2 parameters for addition, number 1 and number 2. If you wanted to print console.log, then you will simply say num1 plus num2 and you are done. Just try to call this addition. Pass 2 values 100 and 200 and wait for your output. Addition, pass 1000 and 2000 and wait for your output. Isn't it pretty? If you wanted to return, that's a question. That's a question, guys. For example, if you will try to write it down, return, and then you will be writing your expression. This will give you the error. That's I really wanted to explain you. So guys, return keyword is implicit in arrow function. You don't write it. If you don't print it, it will return it by default. Let's say I am just naming it as sum. Rather than calling addition, this time I'm calling sum. You can see that because you are returning your value from there, you need to print your returned output into your console statement. So as I said, no function keyword, no return keyword, one single line, and you are done. So it's printing undefined because I'm calling addition, and addition is not returning anything. Also one of the point to learn if you are interested, and just simply call your sum method. Isn't it a clear picture, guys, to use the arrow function? Just take it as a note. We will be using it in our project series. We will be creating JavaScript project series also. we'll using all of these concepts over there. So this is the arrow function, a very precise form of writing the arrow functions.